One of my favorite things to do is to check in with one of Canada's most seasoned Conservative columnists. He's seen so many things. In fact, he started his career, if you believe it, many decades ago as a Liberal. So he has been inside that beast. But of course, he's Edmonton's leading Conservative columnist. I refer, of course, to Lorne Gunter with the Edmonton Sun newspaper, who joins us now via Skype. Lorne, great to see you. I have in front of me and I hope you don't mind my introduction, but I think the fact that you worked within the Liberals, I don't say that as an insult, the opposite.
No.
You say you know how the creature thinks. You know how the animal of the Liberal Party, which is a very survival-oriented animal, you know how it thinks. And so I appreciate columns like this. Let me just read the headline of this. Liberals don't have a mandate to do much of anything. And you talk about their throne speech and how they've got big plans, but how they really had one of the smallest election results in history. I want you to put your thesis forward, and then I want to throw a slightly different way of looking at it at you. But sum up this great column for us in a minute, if you please.
Well, you know, as I started off by saying in the column, I am going to mention every time they get up and talk about the mandate that they have for this massive change or that massive spending, or, you know, turning Canadian society upside down, expanding the role of government, I'm going to mention that they received the lowest percentage of the popular vote of any government in the history of Canada. So in more than 150 years, there's never been a government that has had a lower percentage of the popular vote than the current Trudeau government. They have a mandate for nothing. And, you know, they went to the people, as you well remember, in the summer and said, no, we must have this election. Most important time since the end of the Second World War. We need to settle all of these huge issues. And not one thing was changed by the election. Not the results didn't change a thing. So I don't understand what it is that they think they have Canadians' permission for.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an excellent way of looking at it, is how weak their mandate is, how pointless the election was, other than, you know, they saw an opportunistic moment and they took it. But I want to read two quotes from your column, and this is of Mark Holland, who's the government House Leader, which, if I understand that position, his job is to take the Prime Minister's priorities and move it through Parliament. So, you know, there's the whip, whose job is to make sure everyone is following the party line. The House Leader is, okay, how do we marshal Parliament to get these bills passed? Is that an accurate job description?
That's exactly what he does. So, and the whip works for the House Leader.
Okay. So here's what Mark Holland, the Liberal House Leader, has to say. He says, I am not looking to tolerate, I love that word, to tolerate a lot of obfuscation or political games. We've already had significant debate on these issues, both in and out of the chamber. Now, there's a Jewish word, chutzpah. You got to say the ch, Lorne, which is sometimes tough. Chutzpah means outrageous audacity, outlandish, over-the-top presumptuousness, like, you know, the story of the killer who murders his parents and then asks the court to go easy on him because he's an orphan. That's chutzpah. Here's a guy who gets the lowest mandate of any government in history, and he's saying, I'm not looking to tolerate anyone disagreeing with me. I'm the boss, and we're not going to tolerate anyone asking questions. That's the new definition of chutzpah, Lorne.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's an excellent point to make as well. And that here are the Liberals who came in with this very low mandate, no mandate to do what they were doing before the election, and now they're saying, yes, well, we talked about all this before the election. Don't bother us with the details. Don't stand up in the House of Commons and say you disagree with our internet censorship, or with extending the pandemic benefits, or with expanding the government by about 40% over pre-pandemic levels. Don't come in and try and stop our changes to the labor code that will make all federally regulated businesses subject to having bilingual workplaces, even if they're in Merritt, BC, or in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. It doesn't matter. We talked about these things before the election. We also talked about them during the election, which I would dispute, because I don't think they talked about much of substance during the election. I think they mostly just slung insults at the Tories. But nonetheless, they said, we've talked about these in the last parliament. We talked about them during the election. We have 20 sitting days between now and, they're down to 18 now, but they have 18 sitting days between now and Christmas. Pass all of this stuff. You must pass all of this stuff without debate, because we said you should. And that kind of disregard for democratic traditions, can you imagine? Can you imagine what the Liberals would be doing? They would be screaming and wringing their hands, and they would be gagging if Harper had ever done anything like that. I remember getting into a discussion with a Liberal right after the 2015 election, and this will give you an idea of how unbalanced their thinking is. After the 2015 election, where Harper lost to Trudeau, I got in a discussion with a Liberal in Vancouver who said, "Oh, thank God we got rid of that dictator Harper."
Yeah.
Well, if he was a dictator, how come he held a free election? How did you win an election if the man was a dictator? But that is how unhinged they are. And they're unhinged now. We don't need any more debate, because we've already talked about this a lot. So you should just do what we tell you to.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.